Hello, my dear viewers. Today, let's talk about care. For example, my plant has started to get sick, and I wonder, how can I take care of it so that it can grow? Well, I could water it more, add some fertilizer, but if I don't understand what it actually needs, I won't be able to take proper care of it. So, how can I figure out what it needs? I need to read up and understand what kind of plant it is. I need to study and find out what exactly is beneficial for it. And when we care for others, we often don't take an interest in that other person. We have our own idea of what care means, and we give them what we think is necessary. When people talk about how to become kinder, smarter, or how to learn to build connections, they're really talking about themselves. In other words, they want to make themselves better, smarter, more sociable. But in this polishing of the ideal self, there is absolutely no room for the other person. But what happens to the other person? Right now, I'm preparing for the webinar Self-Reflection, and a lot of my attention is focused specifically on care. Let's try to break this down with a simple, real-life example that happened to me personally. When I write lectures or scripts for videos, I sit down in the morning and dedicate the entire day to this creative work. And in this creative process, I naturally set limits for myself. And when I go out for a walk or to exercise in the evening, I have an enormous amount of energy and feel like a dog that has been kept inside and is finally let out. And so it is. In this joyful state of freedom, I rush to the gym. And I arrive early so I can claim a spot that I like. The instructor, a young girl, is laying out the equipment at that moment. She sets out the mats, the swords, the dumbbells. And in this exuberant state, I decide to join in and help. I have so much energy, I can't just sit on my mat. So I start laying out the equipment with her. And I notice that something is happening to her. She looks at me and says, "You are so active." And her words stop me in my tracks. I think to myself, okay, what am I about to do? Now let's break this down together. We'll divide this incident into several spaces. The first space is me, what is happening inside of me. The second space is the young instructor. The third space is what is happening directly between us. Let me describe my own space, because when we approach self-reflection, when we start to analyze a situation in our mind, the first thing we have is data from within ourselves. That is, I made the decision that this young woman needed my help. How did I come to that decision? I was on my way to the training session looking at the schedule, and I noticed that this young woman also had other sessions before this one. So in my mind, I was already thinking of her as someone who was tired. I even wondered, how is she going to conduct her third training session? In the background, I had a preconceived impression of her, a preset perception of the situation. I was absolutely full of energy, feeling completely invigorated and alive. My body, as well as my mind, were not demanding any sort of intense or strenuous activity, primarily because I was being constrained and held back by my own discipline and self-control. And if I choose to rely solely on what I truly feel deep inside, then if I consult with myself without looking at the young woman, if I consult with myself, then I did everything right. And I am kind and I am caring. And if you were to freeze frame my inner world, then I was even anticipating some kind of reaction from this young woman to my care. That is, something like gratitude or a special attitude. But when my mind was forming this activity, there definitely wasn't any sense of, I don't need your help. And if I weren't a psychoanalyst, if I hadn't worked on myself for so long, then these words, I would have taken them as an offense. And resentment is a form of vindictiveness. Only in this case, I remain the good one in my resentment. In other words, my resentment would have preserved my sense of goodness and my confidence in the rightness of all my actions. I'm doing everything right. It's the girl who has something wrong with her. That's what happens inside. And when we look at a situation from the inside and compare it to our own conclusions, our own values, and most importantly, our own idea of how things should be right, kind, and good, then we risk destroying this flower that we have in a way decided to care for. Now let's set aside my perspective. Let's move from my space into the girl's space. What is happening with the girl? The girl is tired. This is already her third workout, and like anyone else, she is most likely just going through the motions. In other words, she's performing certain actions in a ritualistic way, and when someone tries to disrupt this ritual, especially when she's tired, it creates an additional obstacle, an extra problem that also needs to be dealt with somehow. Besides that, the girl's space is quite similar to, for example, when you are giving a lecture, or when you are waiting for guests, or when you are receiving someone in your office. Each of us has a perception of this space as our own. That is, our animal side perceives anyone's arrival there as an intrusion. And by my actions, I am intruding into the realm, I'll put that word in quotes, of this girl. And our animal instincts will perceive this as a kind of territorial struggle, a question of who is in charge here. And in addition to this, the girl also has her own idea of what is right. I have my own idea of what is right, and she has hers. And in her view, the people who come to her training sessions are not supposed to help. They come, she conducts the training, and then we part ways. All the more so, such an intrusion, it almost creates an obligation. That is, when we show care for someone, it's as if that person now owes us something. And many people perceive care as something that makes them indebted to someone else. So we've looked at my space, the space of the woman, and now let's consider a third space. What was happening between us? What was happening in this interaction? In order for us to see this, we need to rise up, to look from above, as if observing these two people from the outside. You see, this is the third space. I take on the perspective of an independent observer, someone who is neither on one side nor the other, but who tries to be analytical and impartial in this moment. There is a woman who came to the training session and who begins to act very energetically. There is a female instructor who is the host of this space. And in fact, we can see a bit of competition between these two women. It's as if they are starting to divide the space between them. My habit of analyzing allowed me to look at this situation differently, specifically because of the instructor's reaction. In other words, she reacted differently than what I had imagined in my mind. Let's recall those moments when we expected one thing, but reality gave us something completely different. At that moment, our subjectivity comes into conflict with reality. That is, I approach reality and I do not get what I want from it. At that moment, we feel as if we are running into some kind of invisible wall. A wall which in reality is our own personal boundary. And when another person has their own personal boundaries, then we, by coming up against their boundaries, begin to sense our own limits. In other words, at the precise moment of conflict with reality, and we can call this a minor conflict, there are several different ways to respond. You can look at the situation analytically, reflecting on yourself, what happened, what is actually going on. Or you can look at it from the perspective of your own world, as you believe is right, as I do. as I see it, in a kind or good way. And we often use these words in a kind way, in a good way. After all, I'm taking care of you. I'm taking care of you, my dear little flower. I'll give you lots and lots of water. And if the flower had a voice, it would say, I don't need that much water. I'll die from it. But I can't stop pouring water because when I pour the water, I feel good and caring. I like myself when I'm pouring this water onto the flower. I reconnect with some fantasy about my own kindness, about some beautiful image of myself. In the same way, in this situation with the girl, I also reconnected with some ideal image. And if I do not take her into account, her feelings and her perspective, and instead insist on asserting my own right, I might end up getting angry at this girl. And at that moment, in order not to feel bad myself, I will start projecting negativity onto her, looking for her flaws. I might think, she's not really that good, not such a great instructor. And if I really work myself up inside, I might not come at all. In other words, I will devalue her to the point of annihilation. From the perspective of my inner world, it will be annihilation. I erase her. It's as if I am killing her. I end her existence in my world. And all of this happens simply because I couldn't see her, couldn't truly understand her. And at that very moment, at the moment of our connection on V Contacte, in that unique third space where we are together, I couldn't begin to cooperate. That is to say, the moment when I am wise, the moment when I am not trying to impose my own rules on the world, but where I listen to the world, where I observe the world, where I study it. I think each of you has experienced intrusive care, the kind of care that suffocates. On the one hand, care creates the illusion of our dream, and our dream is to be unconditionally accepted, to have the world constantly care for us. The word care evokes a pleasant feeling. Manipulators often take advantage of this. They show a certain kind of care in order to seize power. And when there is little humanity in us, all our care becomes manipulation, just to get something for ourselves. But when we have already survived and begin to truly live, when our humanity emerges, then care, for example, for the home I live in, for my apartment, for my family, for my team, appears. That is care. Not just about myself in that moment, but about something greater than me. Yet at the same time, it is also care for myself because I live in this space. These are the types of examples we will discuss together during the webinars. I invite you to join. The link will be provided below the video. As always, I'd also like to invite you to collaborate with me by sharing your own definition of care in the comments. Try to be concise and capture the essence. Many of you have said that the comments under my videos are just as valuable as the videos themselves. So you see, we are becoming helpers to one another. And in addition to learning how to express yourself and not to hold back, like, I won't write a comment, I won't leave a like, I won't do that. In this way, we are learning cooperation and how to be together. And now I will say goodbye to you until we meet again.